After almost a decade spent making movies in Hollywood and having done no personal appearances for over 8 years, apart from the live segments of his 1968 TV special, Elvis Presley returned to on-stage performances on the 31st of July 1969 at the International Hotel in Las Vegas.
This footage from August 1969 gives a taste of the supercharged atmosphere of his stage comeback. Attired in two-piece outfits styled after karate gis, he excited and thrilled the crowds who flocked to the Showroom International. People travelled from all over the world to see Elvis, and his energetic, dazzling displays of showmanship gained plaudits from both fans and music critics. Between his return to the stage in 1969 and his final concert at Indianapolis, Indiana on the 26th of June 1977, Elvis gave over 1,100 concerts, both in nightclubs in Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and on the almost 30 tours he did across the length and breadth of the continental USA and Hawaii, playing to sell-out crowds in vast arenas. He was like a man who had rediscovered himself and his music. His commitment to his music is clearly heard in live recordings made after his return to concerts. The wasteland of Hollywood was firmly behind him. Before him, the stages of America, and the fulfillment of a dream for millions of fans who had tired of the movies and longed to see Elvis in person. For many fans, the excitement of simply seeing Elvis wasn't enough. They wanted a lasting audio-visual memento of the shows that they saw, which resulted in a significant number of cine cameras being smuggled into the concerts, as well as large numbers of tape recorders. Still cameras were allowed in the large auditoriums, but not in the nightclubs. That didn't stop some fans, though. The end result was that hundreds of thousands of photographs of Elvis on stage are in existence, plus several hundred amateur tape recordings and a good many hours of cine film. We owe a debt of thanks to those fans who took the films. This was before the convenience and technical superiority of camcorders. Video was still in its infancy. In many cases, the films were shot without sound. Trying to match sound to picture afterwards proved extremely difficult, and naturally the transfer of Super 8 and 16mm cine film to videotape incurs some loss of sharpness, brilliance and quality. But how good it is to see these films of Elvis on stage, for there's no denying his charismatic presence and his rapport with his audiences. The films highlight, too, the fun he had on stage, his delightful sense of humour, and his obvious enjoyment in singing and performing for his fans. For those fans who take a keen interest in his unique and colourful stage wear, the films have an added attraction, for some show him in outfits that are rarely seen even in photographs. This footage was taken on Elvis's November 1971 tour, the only tour he did that year. It began in Minneapolis, Minnesota on the 5th of November and ended 11 days later, on November the 16th in Salt Lake City, Utah. A total of 14 sold-out concerts attended by over 180,000 fans. Elvis's grandfather, Jesse Presley, was in the audience at the show in Louisville, Kentucky on the 7th of November. The jumpsuit that Elvis is wearing here is known by fans as the White Matador, probably because of its eye-catching red-lined cape. It was one of the first cape suits worn by Elvis and was said to be his favourite jumpsuit from 1971. There were two other suits of similar design, the Black Matador and a red outfit known as the Burning Love suit, which is well known as Elvis wore it during the film of the Elvis on Tour movie. Another name for the White Matador is the Red Lion, because of the lion motif on the buckle of the wide leather belt worn with it. Elvis added scarves of matching colours with his stage wear, and they were much sought after souvenirs, particularly by female fans, because a kiss often went with a scarf. wore this fetching ensemble at 5 shows on the November 1971 tour. At Minneapolis on the 5th, at Cleveland the following evening, at Baltimore on the 9th of November, at Houston 3 days later, and at Kansas City, Missouri for his penultimate 90-minute-long show before over 10,000 fans at the Municipal Auditorium, when this footage may have been filmed. The white Matador suit has been on display in the main trophy room at Graceland, where it's been admired by visitors touring Elvis's home. It's also one of his most popular and best-known outfits, thanks to the award-winning 1972 MGM documentary Elvis on Tour. He was filmed on the 18th of April in San Antonio, Texas, wearing this outfit, singing, among other songs, Proud Mary and introducing the members of his group. Elvis's regular musicians travelled on this tour. Lead guitarist James Burton, rhythm guitarist John Wilkinson, drummer Ronnie Tutt, bass guitarist Jerry Sheff, pianist Glenn Hardin, and guitarist Charlie Hodge. Charlie's other role was to keep Elvis supplied with water and scarves. Vocal support was given by the Sweet Inspirations and the little girl with the beautiful high voice, Kathy Westmoreland. New to the lineup were bass singer J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet, and rounding out the sound was the Joe Gershow Orchestra. Elvis loved to wear opulent gold rings with diamonds or other precious stones. Band-aids on his fingers ensured that the rings wouldn't slip off, or be easily pulled off by souvenir hunters. When the wide leather-chained belts that Elvis usually wore began to be a hindrance, he'd take them off, so as to feel free to throw himself into the energetic movements that played such an important and eagerly awaited part of his performance. Occasionally, he'd hurl his belt into the crowd, a unique souvenir for whoever caught it. Some of the songs that Elvis was singing on this tour included his opener, That's All Right Mama, and I Got a Woman, on both of which he played acoustic guitar. Bridge Over Troubled Water, Funny How Time Slips Away, You've Lost That Loving Feeling, Lordy Miss Claudie, and The Impossible Dream. He included plenty of his classic early rock and roll. The crowd always wanted to hear hits like Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, One Night, Jailhouse Rock, Blue Suede Shoes, and All Shook Up. Ballads like Love Me Tender and Love Me were generally sung as Elvis worked his way along the front of the stage, kissing the ladies and bestowing the much-prized scarves. Two of the most exciting songs, vocally and visually, were Polk Salad Annie and Suspicious Minds. They gave Elvis an opportunity to raise the entertainment value a couple of notches by performing some karate or other fancy movements, and how the audience responded. When Charlie Hodge attached the cape to the back of Elvis's jumpsuit, it signalled that the end of the show was near. "Ladies and gentlemen, a song we did in Blue Hawaii," he'd say, and go into Can't Help Falling in Love. Then, in one last flamboyant gesture, Elvis would hold up his cape and parade across the stage as thousands of fans cheered and applauded, and a myriad of flashbulbs exploded. He'd disappear off stage to where a waiting limousine would quickly transport him away from the building and the clamouring fans. This jumpsuit should be very familiar because it was widely featured in the 1970 MGM documentary, Elvis That's the Way It Is. It's the chain suit, worn here with a brown macrame sash. After his third successful season in Las Vegas, during which the in-person movie was filmed, Elvis went out on his first tour since 1957. He played 8 shows in 6 cities in September 1970. He wore the famous beaded fringe suit at 4 of these shows, and the chain suit at the other 4, namely St. Louis, Missouri, Detroit, Michigan, and Miami and Tampa in Florida. This footage is probably from the Detroit shows on September the 11th, when 16,000 highly excited fans in the Olympia Stadium welcomed his long overdue return to touring, his return to Splendour. The chain suit was one of 5 jumpsuits that were sent over by Graceland to go on show in the Elvis Centre in Blackpool in 1989. The inventory listing the suits said that it had extra long legs. Although plain compared to many of Elvis's later outfits, the chain suit looks stunning on the King in 1970. A very svelte-looking Elvis comes on stage in Wichita, Kansas on Monday the 19th of June 1972. He's wearing a 2-piece white suit with black trim and a matching cape, plus a multicoloured paisley shirt. The suit, one of several of similar design, was nicknamed by fans the Dude Suit. It was only the second time he'd worn this outfit on stage, the first being at a matinee in Chicago 2 days earlier. It was a change from the white jumpsuits which had become his trademark since early 1970. Elvis certainly cuts a dash in front of the 10,000 fans in the Henry Levitt Arena in Wichita. He'd later wear this outfit in the opening weeks of his 1972 Summer Festival in Las Vegas. Elvis was almost at the end of a very successful tour which had begun in spectacular style 10 days earlier in New York. He'd played 4 sellout shows at Madison Square Garden, each attended by 20,000 fans. He'd broken all attendance records. He'd wowed the hard-bitten New York critics and charmed the newsmen at a rare press conference on June the 9th. After conquering the sophisticated New Yorkers, Elvis had moved triumphantly on through Indiana and Wisconsin and played 3 concerts at the massive Chicago Stadium before heading south to Fort Worth, Texas, and on to Wichita. He had 1 more show to do at Tulsa, Oklahoma the next evening, and then it would be home to Graceland to rest before heading for Las Vegas in August. It didn't matter what part of the country he played, the crowds flocked to see him. People of all ages came to see the King in concert, from the very young to the very old. In many cases, people who'd been fans since the rocking 50s brought their children along. Tight security made it almost impossible to meet Elvis, but exceptions were sometimes made for critically ill children. Elvis would have loved to have met all of his fans, but it was physically impossible. Instead, he sang his heart out on stage and entertained his fans to the best of his ability, and nobody could entertain like Elvis. This tour found Elvis in fine physical form. His karate routines thrilled the crowds. That's the gold championship belt awarded by the International Hotel that he's wearing. Jacket around his shoulders, the King sings his final song for the Wichita crowd. When he sang Can't Help Falling in Love, it was a signal for fans to rush towards the stage and try to touch him. The security guards and his bodyguards had to be on their toes at such times to avoid Elvis or his fans getting hurt. The lucky fans who got next to the stage here were rewarded with a touch of Elvis's hand. Another show is coming to a close. As the applause rings in his ears and thousands of Instamatics record Elvis's final movements on stage, he flings his scarf into the crowd to be caught by some fortunate fan. The last notes of the song echo around the vast arena. The King lays his microphone on the stage and sinks to his knees. What did he feel at such a moment? It must have taken him a while to come down to earth after a show. A parade across the stage and a final salute to the crowd, and Elvis makes his usual quick exit. leaving his fans with memories that they'll relive again and again, and which they'll cherish forever. Filming in the Las Vegas Hilton, formerly the International, was a hazardous affair, because the ever-watchful security guards would confiscate cine cameras and destroy film if they saw anyone attempting to film Elvis. Luckily, some people succeeded in getting some footage, even if they had to go up in the balcony to film. It was easier to shoot from up there. In this footage from mid-August 1972, Elvis is wearing another of his white dude suits, this time with turquoise decoration down the side of the pant legs. His shirt of electric blue looks good against his tan-skinned and dark hair. Elvis often wore macrame sashes, sometimes beaded, in the early 1970s, before the wide leather chain belts became the norm. Doing energetic routines in time to the beat may have looked good and excited the crowds, but it put a strain on Elvis's clothes. Indeed, these dude suits were replaced later in August because the pants kept splitting when Elvis went into his karate-inspired movements. He had to change pants one time and threw the split pair into the audience. By the time the British fan club arrived in Las Vegas at the end of August, Elvis was back to wearing jumpsuits. Flash photography wasn't allowed at the Hilton either, but many people ignored this rule, and it was quite amusing to see the security guards or showroom staff scurrying down to where a flash had gone off. By the time they got there, the camera was hidden in someone's pocket or handbag, until the coast was clear again. We join Elvis here towards the end of a show at the Honolulu International Center in Hawaii. The date is November the 18th, 1972, and this is a matinee in front of a crowd of 8,400 people in the same arena that would be used 2 months later, on January the 14th, 1973, when Elvis did his historic live Aloha from Hawaii via satellite telecast, a TV special that widened the frontiers of entertainment. In the crowd for this matinee were many fans who travelled from Japan. Elvis was amazingly popular there, despite the language barrier. There would be many Japanese at the Aloha concert too, despite it being broadcast live to Japan. As usual, Elvis donned his glittering red line cape for the closing number, Can't Help Falling in Love. The song, of course, had its origins in the 1961 film Blue Hawaii, and the people of Hawaii had regarded Elvis as a hero ever since he'd done a benefit show in March 1961 to raise money for the USS Arizona Memorial. This must be one of Elvis's most spectacular outfits. Dubbed the Black Way Down suit because it was pictured on the sleeve of the 1977 single of that song, it's relatively rare, even in photos. There was a similar, even rarer suit called the White Way Down, about which little is known. Elvis had discarded his wide black leather belt earlier in this show. He'd first worn this outfit in San Bernardino, California, 6 days earlier. The November tour had begun on the 8th in Texas and would end with an evening performance on the 18th in Honolulu. After this show, Elvis gave a press conference at the Hilton Hawaiian Village Hotel when it was announced that the proceeds of the Aloha show would be donated to the Kui Lee Cancer Fund. Cancer victim Lee, a Hawaiian songwriter, had penned I'll Remember You, which Elvis had recorded in 1966, and it would be one of the most memorable tunes in the Aloha special. It's Sunday afternoon, 29th of April, 1973. Elvis comes on stage to perform for over 7,000 fans packed into the Seattle Center Arena in Washington State. He'd been touring California and the Pacific Northwest of the USA for the previous 6 days. The outfit he's wearing here is well known to Elvis buffs from many photographs. It's called the Blue Swirl and is one of his most glittering and spectacular jumpsuits. Many members of the British fan club who were in Las Vegas the previous September would have seen Elvis wearing this suit, because he wore it at a special 3 a.m. show on the final weekend of his summer festival, and again at the closing show on the 4th of September. There were gasps of admiration from the audience when he appeared on stage in this suit. On those shows, he wore a blue macrame sash, not the matching blue and silver leather belt he's wearing here. A dazzling silver-lined cape completed this outfit, which was auctioned off at Sotheby's in the early 1990s. There's a story in one of Sean Shaver's books that Elvis saw a photo of himself in this suit, taken in Las Vegas the previous summer, and realised what a flattering outfit it was, so he decided to wear it again in Seattle during his April 1973 tour. Elvis was still at his peak in the spring of 1973, looking and sounding good. The Aloha from Hawaii via satellite show had been shown on American TV on April the 4th, and more folks than ever wanted to see him in concert. And since Seattle was close to the border with Canada, where the special had been seen too, a good many Canadians were in the crowd cheering Elvis on. Seattle, of course, was where location filming had been done in 1963 for the MGM movie It Happened at the World's Fair. And when he performed here in 1973, Elvis told the crowd that he'd filmed in Seattle when he was young. Really young. Was it only 11 years since Elvis had made that movie? Looking at the 1970s superstar entertaining the Seattle crowd, the 1960s movie era seems a long way off. A few hours after he'd entertained the punters in Seattle on Sunday afternoon, Elvis was back on stage for the evening performance on 29th of April 1973. He chose another rare suit for the show on Sunday evening. Fans know it as the Today suit because it was featured on the sleeve of the Today album. In this footage, he's discarded the belt and added the yellow-lined cape with intricate patterns of stones before going off stage. Just over 2 months later, in early July, he wore the Today suit at a show at Atlanta, Georgia, and it marked the last time he'd ever wear a cape on tour. The main reason he stopped wearing capes was because they were a security hazard. When he was bending over to kiss fans at the end of his shows, people would grab at his cape and almost pull him off stage. Love or loathe the capes, they were a unique part of Elvis's stage wear in the early 70s. Graceland's trophy room has many of his famous capes on display, while others are in hard rock cafes and Elvis museums around the world. On his May tour in 1974, Elvis introduced a new style of jumpsuit. Instead of the studs and stones of the previous years, suits with intricate embroidered designs made their debut. They were amongst the most distinctive and popular outfits that Elvis ever wore. The colourful American Eagle seen here was one of those stunning new outfits. Another was the beautiful Peacock, which was said to be Elvis's own favourite suit. Both of these suits have been introduced at 2 shows at the Los Angeles Forum on the 11th of May. Elvis always felt that he had to wear something special for his LA fans. In 1970, he'd worn an amazing suit with caped sleeves and long fringes at the Forum. 4 years later, he chose the Peacock and American Eagle suits. He continued to wear this style of outfit throughout 1974, both in nightclubs and on tour, and towards the end of his Las Vegas season, he introduced 2 more elaborately embroidered stage costumes, the Magnificent Tiger and the Chinese Dragon outfits. They caused quite a buzz when he appeared on stage wearing them. The American Eagle and Tiger motifs were not just decorative, they were symbolic of the karate doctrine with which Elvis was deeply involved. He'd just gained his 8th degree black belt. He was giving long talks during his shows in Vegas at the end of August. He told how Buddhist monks studied animals like the eagle and the tiger in order to learn how to defend themselves against robbers. The man who was the main creative force behind Elvis's stage wear was Bill Ballou of the IC Costume Company of California, although Elvis and others contributed ideas. For instance, Elvis came up with the idea for the tiger design, probably because his karate name was Tiger. Ballou had designed the earthy black leather suit for the 1968 TV special, and he was invited to design an outfit for Elvis's stage comeback in 1969. He came up with the idea of the two-piece outfits based on karate gis. The jumpsuits evolved from there, and got more elaborate, gaudy even, over the years. They were made of a heavy 100% gabardine wool fabric from Milan, Italy, and were hand-stitched. Ballou obtained many of the decorative nail-head studs and semi-precious stones from Austria and Czechoslovakia. Elvis came up with the idea of the wide leather belts after he bought a belt with a gold eagle motif on Hollywood Sunset Strip. He hadn't wanted to wear a tie on his TV special. He wore a scarf secured by a diamond ring. So when, in the 1970s, he wanted something to throw out to fans, scarves seemed the obvious choice. John Wilkinson, Elvis's rhythm guitarist, told British fan club members a little about Elvis's jumpsuits in 1972. He said, "There's jumpsuits of all different colours. The total is about 25. I would say that the best one he has would go at least $1,000. Many of the jumpsuits are seen by over 600,000 visitors each year in Graceland's trophy room. Others are in private collections or Elvis museums. Not all fans, of course, are interested in Elvis's jumpsuits, but when the great auction houses like Sotheby's auction off one of the jumpsuits, they fetch many thousands of pounds." At the time this footage was taken, in Columbus, Ohio, on June 25, 1974, Elvis was coming under frequent attack from the press, who were printing alarming stories about his ballooning weight, his unusual lifestyle, and his lacklustre performances. With hindsight, we know that he had many problems health-wise, but footage such as this, filmed in the St. John's Arena in Columbus with 14,000 fans present, belies the press stories. In June 1974, Elvis still looked in good shape, with his consummate showmanship and artistry intact, and his sense of fun often creating amusing diversions. For instance, 4 days after this concert, he delighted an audience in Kansas City, where, incidentally, he was wearing this same American Eagle suit again. It was Saturday evening, and everyone was intent on having a good time, including Elvis. Something had tickled him after his opening number, and he began to laugh. He tried to start his second song, but couldn't sing for laughing, and the audience was laughing too. Elvis had a very infectious laugh. At length, unable to get serious, he went into a verse of Blue Christmas, and managed to get his laughter under control and continue the show. It takes a special kind of talent to improvise in that way. Elvis would often ad-lib and change the words to songs. That was the thing about Elvis Presley. You never knew what he might say or sing or do. He was a truly instinctive artist, and no two shows were ever the same. Dennis Sanders, the director of the 1970 documentary Elvis, That's the Way It Is, said that you could never anticipate Elvis. For this reason, one show was never enough. Fans wanted to see Elvis over and over. Some of the American fans would follow Elvis's tours from city to city, usually hundreds of miles apart, and then attend every show in a month-long season in Las Vegas. Foreign fans would save all year so that they could travel to America to see him. Between 1972 and 1976, the British fan club took large numbers of members to Las Vegas annually to see the King, and in June 1977, they saw what turned out to be his final 2 shows. Footage like this, whilst not as professional as movies like Elvis on Tour, has a certain charm of its own and tremendous power to evoke memories from those fans who saw Elvis in concert. For many people, seeing him in person was the highlight of their lives. He was that good, that charismatic. It's impossible to describe adequately the magic of Elvis on stage. You had to experience it personally, and as often as possible. Nevertheless, fans who are either too young or unable to go and see Elvis, for whatever reason, can still get an immense amount of pleasure from footage like this. One thing no film can do is recapture Elvis's voice. Not even the sound quality of compact discs is as good as hearing him live, just as no photograph can fully do justice to his features. Just as he rang the changes with stagewear, Elvis changed the repertoire of songs in his shows. By 1974, he was less and less happy at having to continually sing hits like Hound Dog and All Shook Up. He still kept such songs in his shows because that was what people wanted to hear. But his heart was really into more meaningful or contemporary tunes, like Let Me Be There, Help Me, You Gave Me a Mountain, and An American Trilogy. Elvis could sing anything, and he did, from the sexy fun of Fever to the deep religious conviction of How Great Thou Art. He certainly gave the crowd at Columbus their money's worth. The headline in the Columbus Dispatch next day was, Big E, explosive as usual, and the review said that he had a magic touch, thrilling fans from 8 to 80. One of Elvis's most famous and popular jumpsuits was the Aloha one. When the groundbreaking satellite show was announced, Elvis told his costume designer, "We're going to do a show in Hawaii, and I want something that is very patriotic, something with the spirit of America." What more patriotic than America's national emblem, the bald-headed eagle? The outfit, with its eagle motif in red and blue stones and gold studs, and belt with replicas of the American presidential seal, is eye-catching without being gaudy. There were several capes, including a floor-length one which Elvis never wore on stage, but which attracted a lot of attention when it was put on show in the trophy room at Graceland, along with the Aloha suit. Elvis wore this suit at several concerts in the spring and summer of 1973, when this footage was probably taken, as well as in Las Vegas. He wore the suit again several times in March 1974 during a tour of the southern states, notably on March the 16th at a matinee at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis. In 1974, Elvis was at the Houston Astrodome to give 2 shows on Sunday, March the 3rd. As he had on his first appearance there in March 1970, he rode around the huge arena in a red Jeep, waving to the crowd before being driven out to the stage in the centre of the field to begin his matinee. The Astrodome, which bills itself as the 8th wonder of the world, although some fans might say that this title belongs to Elvis, is the world's largest air-conditioned stadium. It's used as a baseball field, and American football is played there too. In March each year, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is held, and Elvis was part of that event. His part of the show followed some chuck wagon races, and he told the crowd, "I'm event number 8. Due to the size of the place, the shows were a little different. The stage with the musicians and singers already in place was towed out to the centre of the field by a farm tractor. Joe Gershow's orchestra didn't take part in the shows. Elvis was too far away from the crowd to kiss anyone or throw out scarves. Due to the size of the place, the acoustics were not very good, and Elvis wasn't entirely happy at having to do shows there. The stage revolved 180 degrees, first to the right, then to the left, so all some people got was a profile of Elvis. It wasn't the best place to take photos or film either, because of the distance that separated him from the crowd. Just before Elvis was about to appear, all the lights in the Astrodome would go out. He'd enter, riding in the Jeep, and as the spotlights hit him, pandemonium would break out, and Elvis would ride triumphantly around the Astrodome. Although it's difficult to see clearly, the jumpsuit he's wearing is an extremely rare one, unknown to many fans. It's got brown and gold decoration in a flower-like motif and is known as the brown flower suit. He wore one exactly like it, but with light turquoise blue stones in Las Vegas the previous summer. During Elvis's appearance at the Astrodome in March, a local radio station in Houston had a celebration saluting the King of Entertainment and played his records throughout the weekend. Attendance at the event proved that Elvis was indeed the King of Entertainment. In February and March 1970, he had set a record attendance figure of 43,614 at a Saturday night show. At this matinee in 1974, 43,974 attended, breaking his own record, and then at the evening performance, 44,175 people watched him. That's over 88,000 folks who saw Elvis in one single day, and it was the largest single-day attendance in the Astrodome's history for any event. Elvis got $100,000 per show. Although it's not easy to see at this distance, the jumpsuit that Elvis is wearing is the white nail suit from 1973, but minus its cape. On stage with him are James Burton, John Wilkinson, Ronnie Tutt, Glenn Hardin, Charlie Hodge, Kathy Westmoreland, The Sweet Inspirations, J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet, and his new vocal trio, Voice. Bass guitarist Duke Bardwell is new to the lineup also. As it was, they were all crammed together on the rather small stage. At the start of the show, the 2001 theme wasn't played. Instead, Ronnie Tutt gave a drum roll, and they began the opening riff. There was an amusing diversion as Elvis was ending a sexy version of Fever. Colonel Parker climbed onto a very small donkey, and Vernon Presley led him around to the front of the stage. Elvis bent down, and the Colonel handed him a drink. Elvis and the whole audience was laughing as the donkey was led away and the Colonel dismounted. Elvis never played the Astrodome again after 1974, but as event number 8, he's certainly made his mark on the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Elvis leaves the Astroworld Hotel in March 1970 and hurries to his waiting bus. Watching footage like this reminds you of the fan who saw Elvis from the very back of a vast arena and said, "I knew it was Elvis when he started wiggling." Exactly which suit this is hard to tell, but the red inserts in the pant legs narrows it down to two. Either the suit with multicoloured stones, known as the Memphis 74, or the Aloha suit. The presence of backing trio Voice confirms that it was taken during the March 1974 tour, which included concerts in Oklahoma, Alabama, North Carolina, Louisiana and Virginia, plus 5 shows in Memphis. It was at the closing show of this tour that RCA recorded the album Elvis as recorded live on stage in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum in his hometown. Elvis comes on stage to greet the crowd and gets a rapturous ovation as usual, at another concert on his March 1974 tour. This time it's probably at Charlotte, North Carolina. He gave 2 performances here on 9th of March before almost 12,000 fans at the Charlotte Coliseum, and at the evening performance he wore this sparkling, heavily encrusted costume. It's known to fans as the Memphis 74 suit, because he wore it in Memphis on 16th of March, and again 4 days later on the 20th at the time he was recording the live album during the final concert of his tour. The suit had actually made its debut the previous year, and he'd worn it during his month-long 1973 summer season in Las Vegas, notably at the long and memorable closing show on the 3rd of September, when many members of the British fan club were in the audience. Interestingly, when Graceland put this suit on display in their trophy room in the early 1980s, they added a matching red-lined cape. Whether Elvis ever wore the cape on stage is unclear, since he was phasing out capes in the summer of 1973. The usual parade across the stage, and then Elvis hurries off to his waiting limousine. Here's Elvis in one of his two-piece suits from the 1975 spring tour. He wore this same suit at the Jackson Benefit Show on May the 5th. The pendant Elvis is wearing is his gold and diamond Maltese cross, which visitors to Graceland may have seen on display in the trophy room. Although he looks a little heavy and rather dishevelled, there's no denying the pleasure in Elvis's face. He once told a Las Vegas audience, "I love it out here. I know that people come from all over. They fly, they drive, and there's nobody on this stage, I mean anybody, that had rather be here than anywhere else in the world." A shy, quietly spoken man off stage, Elvis loved being in the spotlight and singing, and then receiving the crowd's acclaim at the end of another memorable performance. Elvis loved cars, from his classy black Rolls-Royce to sleeker, sporty Italian models. This footage, from the 1960s, was taken at his home at Rocker Place in Bel Air, California. He lived here from September 1965 to October 1967. It was a ranch-style house up a hill with blind curves. A mountain road ran above the property, which fans used as a vantage point to peer down with binoculars or telephoto lenses, giving Elvis very little privacy, especially after his marriage. The fans would watch all the comings and goings of cars and people in the front yard and in the patio and pool area. The fans, known as the Bel Air Bums, also waited outside the front gate to watch Elvis drive in or out, either on his own or with Priscilla. He spent a lot of time in California in the 1960s, of course, making several movies each year. The Rocker Place house had all the trappings of Hollywood, including the obligatory swimming pool. Elvis liked to relax on the patio with his friends. Most stars, if their privacy had been invaded in this way, would have probably called in the police to remove the spying fans. Not Elvis. He loved his fans and was loath to call in the authorities to remove them. When driving in or out, he often stopped too to give an autograph or let fans take a photo, and he'd chat to them if time allowed. He never acted like a big star. On July the 12th, 1975, Elvis, in navy jumpsuit with silver eagle, leaves for a show via a back door of the Daniel Boone Hotel in Charleston, West Virginia. Later that afternoon, Elvis's limousine draws up at the same back doorway, as the waiting fans crane their necks. Some fans had probably left the concert early to watch him return. Although security was tight, many policemen were keen to see Elvis too. A dishevelled Elvis emerges from the car and waves to fans before disappearing inside to rest before his evening show. Elvis, in his Indian suit, leaves for the evening show in Charleston. It was very difficult to film Elvis as he entered a building. Did you spot him in the back of the car? During his 70s tours, Elvis's travelling arrangements were kept secret for security reasons. Those fans who managed to find out details were rewarded with a wave as he prepared to board his chartered jet. This was taken in 1972, around the time of the filming of Elvis on tour. In 1975, Elvis bought a huge Convair 880 jet plane and had it customised at enormous expense. His musicians arrived by chartered Greyhound bus and flew in a separate aircraft, while Elvis and his entourage were driven directly to his plane by limousine. His girlfriend, Linda Thompson, and his father, Vernon, are with him here. Several bodyguards and friends travelled with Elvis too. Elvis smiles as he goes up the steps and waves to the fans. He's wearing one of his overcoats with fur collars. This footage was taken on the 22nd of April 1976 at Kansas City Airport, Missouri. Elvis had played the first concert of his April tour at Kansas City the previous evening, and now he was on his way to Omaha, Nebraska for his next show later that day. 1976 was America's bicentenary year, and Elvis wanted to play in as many cities as possible. His new plane, which he named the Lisa Marie after his little daughter, would transport him to all of those cities in kingly comfort. The name was painted on the side in red and blue script, and on the tail he had his famous TCB logo in gold. It stood, of course, for taking care of business in a flash. The plane's call sign was Hound Dog 1, and its number was N88OEP. It wasn't long before the fans recognised the sleek aircraft, although Elvis always landed or took off from remote areas of the airports, away from the ticket desks and crowded passenger lounges. As the Lisa Marie gathers speed and takes off, the skyscrapers of downtown Kansas City come into view. Within a few moments, the plane climbs high into the sky, headed for the next city, taking the king to his next concert. 2 days later, on 24th of April, the Lisa Marie touches down at San Diego Airport in California. Linda Thompson, in white, leads the way, and the lady in yellow behind Elvis is Sandy Miller, Vernon's lady friend. They'd just flown in from Denver, Colorado. After deplaning, they get into the waiting Cadillac limo. Elvis was in town to give a concert at the San Diego Sports Arena that evening before 17,500 fans. That's fan photographer Sean Shaver coming down the Lisa Marie's steps. A sleek Cadillac limousine brings Elvis and party to the steps of the waiting Lisa Marie. He's about to depart from Long Beach, California, where he'd given 2 concerts at the Long Beach Arena the previous day. Elvis, with a white caped coat over his shoulders and wearing a black and white outfit that he's said to have designed himself, ascends the plane's steps, followed by Linda Thompson. He pauses and glances around, waving to a few onlookers. Some of his entourage, then Sandy Miller and Vernon Presley, follow him and Linda onto the plane. There's Sean Shaver again, loaded with cameras, standing near the bottom of the steps. This footage was taken on 26th of April 1976. Elvis was on his way to Seattle to give the penultimate concert of his April tour. Acquiring the Lisa Marie meant a great deal to Elvis. When his onstage comedian Jackie Caan made a tribute record in 1977, he quoted Elvis as saying, "I bought this jet for all the people, because when they see that a truck driver can wind up owning his own plane, it gives them hope for the future." It was true. Elvis Presley had come a long way since he'd been born into poverty in a tiny wooden shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. The Lisa Marie was symbolic of his amazing success. Another airport, another tour. Elvis, accompanied by Linda Thompson, boards the Lisa Marie at Tulsa, Oklahoma, on July the 5th, 1976, en route for a show in Memphis. He'd played a July the 4th show at Tulsa the day before, on America's bicentenary. He's wearing the self-designed duotone suit again. He'd worn this on stage in Las Vegas in August 1975. Captain Elwood David was the Lisa Marie's pilot. He and the rest of the crew always had to be on standby in case Elvis decided to fly somewhere at short notice. Elvis, in jogging suit, arrives by Greyhound bus at Syracuse Airport, New York State, on July the 26th, 1976. Since Rochester, where he was performing that evening, had too short an airport runway for the Lisa Marie, he flew there by prop jet. Kansas City Airport. This car carries Elvis's friend Ed Parker, his cousins Billy and Joe Smith, and Charlie Hodge. Here comes Elvis. He's on his way to Omaha, Nebraska to give a concert on 19th of June 1977, which will be filmed as part of the Elvis in Concert TV special. This tour would be his final one. Elvis, in jogging suit with wide leather belt underneath, hurries on board the Lisa Marie, followed by Ginger Alden. He gives a quick wave to fans before disappearing inside the plane with members of his entourage. The door is secured, ready for takeoff. As the jet gets airborne, the familiar sight of the Kansas City skyscrapers comes into view. Just 7 days after this film was taken, Elvis would give his final performance at Indianapolis. In 1984, the Lisa Marie was put on display opposite Graceland. A blinding light show from 20,000 fans at Madison Square Garden, New York, in June 1972 welcomes the King on stage, wearing his flashy porthole suit. After the New York shows, Elvis said, "I'm just an entertainer, out there trying to make the audience happy. If I did that, then I'm equally happy." For someone who was just an entertainer, Elvis gave, and still gives, immense pleasure to millions of people.
No one summed it up better than Sean Shaver when he said, "In all of show business, there is no one who achieved more fame and greatness than Elvis Presley, no one who had more fans, no one inspired more love, and no one fulfilled their dreams in a grander manner."